Hi everyone and welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'll be showing you step by step how I create stencils in Cricut Design Space and also with my Cricut Explore 3. Since we're going to be moving into the Christmas season, today's stencil themes are all Christmas related. I really hope that you enjoy today's video, and I do want to thank Cricut so much for sponsoring today's video. Now let's go ahead and get started. To create my first stencil, I'm going into Design Space and then I'm selecting Shapes on the left-hand side. For this one, I'm going to be selecting Square. I like to use this one the most when doing my stencils. I'm then unlocking the image on the lower left-hand side of the square. And this way I can make it a rectangle or a different size square if I wanted to. So I'm just moving that to the side, and then for this one I'm going into images in my Design Space, and I know that I want to use a Santa image, so I'm just typing in Santa and searching in Design Space. It pulled up all of these Santa words and Santa images, and let me tell you, there are so many to choose from. So after scrolling for a few minutes, I finally found the Santa image I wanted to use. So I then selected it and then clicked Insert Image on the lower right-hand side. I then went back to my shape and I'm just getting that resized to the size that I want my stencil to be. Once I have that all resized, I then am going down to my Santa, resizing that, and then placing the Santa over top of my square right in the center. And then I am highlighting both of the square and the Santa together. And then on the lower right-hand side, I'm selecting Slice. Now this is going to slice the Santa out of the square. I'm then just moving the Santas over, and I can delete those because I don't need them anymore. And then I'm left with my new stencil. And then it's all ready for me to make and cut out. So I'm just going to the top right-hand side and I'm going to be selecting Make It. For this one, I'm just doing it on a regular mat, and then it's okay. I don't have to make any changes or mirror it or anything like that. And then for the material that I'm using, I am going to be using stencil vinyl for this one. So I'm just typing in stencil so that it will pull up the stencil vinyl. It has stencil film or vinyl, so I just selected the vinyl. And then this is what the stencil vinyl looks like. It is a grid vinyl on the front side, and then on the back of the vinyl, it is just like this white plain paper backing. You can do stencils with regular vinyl, but I prefer to use the stencil vinyl. I have my square already cut out. This is the size that I'm going to need for my stencil, and then I'm just placing it onto my Cricut mat vinyl side up. To cut out my design, I'm using my Cricut Explore 3, and after that cuts out the image, it's then time to weed the image. Now with regular vinyl, you normally will weed around your design. For the stencils, you weed out the actual design because that's where you're going to be painting. So here I'm just weeding out the Santa image, but then you do not want to forget that all of the little image pieces, like for his eyes and his mouth, you have to weed those out as well. I have forgotten to do this in the past and then had to go back, so it's just easier to remember to do all of the little pieces as well. So once I have my image all weeded out, I am going to prep my piece of wood that I'm going to be using. It is a 5x5 square that I got from Michael's, and I'm just painting this one with my Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster, and I did 2 coats of paint. Then, since my wood's all ready, I then can get my image transferred onto my tape. So with the stencils, you transfer it with the transfer tape just like you would with regular vinyl. So here I'm just placing my transfer tape over my stencil, and this is what it looks like when it's all transferred onto the tape. And then I'm just placing that in the center of my piece of wood and then pressing it onto the wood with my Cricut scraper tool. Then once my stencil's all transferred, I'm then removing my transfer tape, and then it's time to start painting. And the paint that I'm using is the Tuscan Red chalk paint from Folk Art, and I did this color on the entire stencil using my Dollar Tree stencil brush. I let the paint completely dry before removing any of the stencil, and then I start with the outside vinyl first, removing that, and then I go in with my Cricut tool to remove any of these smaller vinyl pieces. For this piece, I wanted it to be a little bit more rustic, so I ended up adding some of my Java colored chalk paint from Folk Art, and I just dry brushed that over top of the entire piece. And this is what it looks like all finished. I think it is so cute, and it would be the perfect piece to add on a tiered tray. And I just love the fact that I was able to create this in Design Space and make my own stencil. I also created this piece as well. This I did the same way as the Santa one. It was already an image in Design Space, and I ended up just adding it to this framed wood piece from Hobby Lobby. For this next stencil, I'm actually going to be showing you how to create your own, not just using an image in Design Space. I started by using the shapes again, and I just unlocked that and made it the shape that I'm going to want for my stencil. And then I went over to text, and for this one, I'm going to be typing out the words Farm Fresh. My words were a little bit large, so I just resized those down a little bit, and then I did go back and change the font. And the font that I'm using for my Farm Fresh words is a font called Aldine. So I got that changed, and then I also wanted my words to have a curve to them, so I just went up to curve and curved them around just a bit. And then I'm also going to be going to text again, and I'm going to be typing out the word Christmas. And I am going to be just resizing that down a little bit. And then for the font that I'm using on this one, it's a font called Eliana Samantha, and it is a font from dafont.com. And I actually meant to type out the words Christmas trees, so I just added the word trees here, resized that down. And then I'm also going to be adding an image from Design Space, so I went into images, and then I'm typing out the words pine tree because I want to add a pine tree. There are so many trees in Design Space. After scrolling and scrolling, I finally found the perfect tree, so I selected that and inserted it into my canvas. Now that I have my tree inserted, I do want to show you guys real quick that if I were to attach my Farm Fresh, the tree, and the Christmas trees word all together, and then try to move that over top of my shape and slice it out as one whole piece, it will not do it. Cricut Design Space only lets you slice out like 1 or 2 images at a time, and this is multiple, so I will have to slice out each image on their own. So I'm going to start with the Farm Fresh one. I'm making my shape just a little bit bigger, and then I'm placing the Farm Fresh words at the very top of the stencil. I am highlighting it with the shape and then making sure that it is centered horizontally before I slice it, and then going to the bottom right hand corner and selecting slice, and then I can delete the Farm Fresh words because I do not need them anymore. Then I'm going to be doing my tree next, so I'm taking my tree, putting it in the center, and then just resizing that to the size that I want it to be. I am also going to be highlighting it together and centering it horizontally, and then just going down to the bottom right hand side and selecting slice. For this one, I am only going to be deleting one of the trees because I am going to be using one of the trees still. So next, I'm taking the tree that I have left over, I'm just resizing that a little bit, and I'm going to be having smaller trees on each side of my larger tree. So I'm just resizing that, and then of course, you probably know what's next. I'm going to be slicing that one out. And then like before, I'm keeping one tree because I'm still going to be adding the second tree on the other side of the larger tree. So just very quickly, I did it the same way, just place it on the side of the bigger tree and slice it out. I then can delete both trees. And then of course, I needed to do my Christmas tree words. I just placed that underneath my actual pine trees and slice those out the exact same way. I then can delete my Christmas tree words, and I am left over with the stencil that I just created. And I'm going to be making it the exact same as I did the other ones. I went to make it. For this one, I'm doing it on a mat. I don't need to change anything. I don't need to mirror my image. And the material that I'm using, I'm still using my stencil vinyl just like the last one, but like I had mentioned before, you can use regular vinyl. I just find it a little bit easier to use the stencil vinyl. I cut it out on my Cricut Explorer 3, and then I weeded the image out the same as I did the last one. Now for this project, I'm going to show you how I created my little sign that I'm doing. I'm using this piece of wood. It's kind of like a shadow box piece. This is from Hobby Lobby. It does have a hanger on it, but I'm going to be covering that up because I'm going to be using this sign backwards. I'm painting the entire inside of this wood piece with my Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster. I did do 2 coats of that paint, and then for the outside edges, the sides, and then the back of it, I did paint with my Folk Art chalk paint in the color Rich Black. I was just really careful when going around the sides so that I had a really nice straight line. Now that my wood piece is all ready, I'm getting my image all transferred, and I'm using my Cricut transfer tape, and I'm just pressing that onto the image using my Cricut scraper tool, and then I'm placing the stencil in the center of my wood piece, and then I'm just using my scraper tool once again to press that stencil onto the wood. The color I'm using for the words Farm Fresh is the Rich Black chalk paint from Folk Art, and I'm using a Dollar Tree stencil brush to apply the paint. For all of my trees, I'm using a color called Antique Green, and then for my words Christmas trees, I'm using the Folk Art chalk paint in the color Tuscan Red. I let that completely dry before removing the stencil. I removed the large piece of the stencil first, and then I went back in with my Cricut tool to remove any of the little pieces of vinyl that were in between my letters. To add some detail to this sign, I'm using some of these pine greenery pieces that I cut off of their stems, and they are from Hobby Lobby. I just hot glued those right over top of that hanger at the very top of the sign, and then I took a double piece of jute and I just made a really simple bow. I cut off the long pieces of the bow and then just hot glued that right in the center of my greenery, and then I wanted to add just a little pop of like a burgundy red color, so I did use some of my berry garland from Dollar Tree. I just wrapped it up a little bit and then I hot glued it on the very top of my bow. And this is what my custom sign looks like all finished. I love how this one turned out. And again, it was so easy to create this custom stencil to create my sign. I really hope that you guys enjoyed today's video and found it helpful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, I hope that you will consider subscribing, and please be sure to hit the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of my future videos. And I do want to thank Cricut again so much for sponsoring today's video. Thank you so much for watching.